All right, we're going to briefly go over chapter 14.2, personality traits. We're going to talk a little bit of the kind of how we measure personality. All right, so there's two ways to approach studying personality. The nomothetic approach basically has these generalized laws describing which aspects of personality influence behavior, and the idiographic approach uses intensive case studies, right? And so this is kind of like when we talk about Phineas Gage, like you get this really unique individual that can't generally be applied to broader swaths, right? So nomothetics is going to use actual evidence-based procedures. We're going to look at kind of broad general stuff, and an idiographic approach might be studying someone with dissociative identity disorder, or maybe a serial killer, or somebody who has some unique experiences. When we talk about personality, we're going to talk about two different types of, or when we talk about the personality traits, we're talking about them as traits and states, right? So a trait is a consistent, long-lasting behavioral tendency, um, right? And state could be a temporary activation of particular behavior. So someone will use something as kind of simple as anxiety. A person who has trait anxiety would be anxious about many things across multiple cases of life, whereas state might be maybe somebody who's going parachuting, maybe somebody who has specifically test anxiety, right? It's you're only anxious under these particular behaviors. All right, so here's another question. When we talk about personality traits, right, we're usually looking for trait approach to personality, right? State approach is based on environment, and so that's not very stable, right? So many familiar personality traits have been studied, and we're going to talk about them. So the big five is kind of like the coin of the realm. It's this basic idea that there's five areas that we can look at and using factor analysis, which is a statistical version, a statistical way to see if these traits are found across multiple populations. And so the basic ones are neuroticism, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to new experience. All right. So the first one is neuroticism, right? And that's the tendency to experience unpleasant emotions, right? Do you see your glasses half full? Can you be overwhelmed? Do you have a lot of emotion dysregulation? Is it easy for you to get mad, sad, frustrated, anxious? Right. The next category is the extroversion, right? And this is your ability to, or your tendency to seek stimulation, enjoy the company of other people, right? Kind of what we'd think of is talking about adrenaline junkies or people person. So someone who's a people person or is really looking for to do things to not be bored would be have high extroversion. Now there's some overlaps with these personality traits as we move forward, but that's it's pretty much agreed upon. Agreeableness is can you see take the other person's point of view, right? Compassionate rather than antagonistic, right? How do you get along? Conscientiousness is a tendency to show self-discipline, right? Be reliable, be a self-starter, strive for competence and achievement. Someone high in conscientiousness would probably be a good student, be the first person to practice for a sport, be the last one to leave, right? Volunteers, is able to control impulses. And then openness to new experiences, the tendency to enjoy new experiences and new ideas, right? Is this the person who tries every new restaurant in town, always orders something different, never met a person, never met a stranger kind of person, or is it are you one of those people who likes regular routine? And these are kind of these broad personality traits that pretty much all of us share in some way, shape, or form. Now, some of the criticisms of this big five is what we call those personality traits is based on the human language or on the English language. So it may not uh, match on other languages, right? So I always love the word in German Schadenfreude, right, which is the pleasure you take in the misfortune of others. Really, no word for that in English, so it would be hard to kind of measure that using the English language. Now, of course, because it's a bunch of psychologists, and psychologists are all scientists and have their own theories, right? Some people say that there's too few traits, right? We're missing some things. And then some people say that there's too many traits. And with the English language and this kind of Western European industrialized focus, it has limited applicability cross-culturally. So the big five is kind of the coin of the realm, but it may not be the number one for all human, universal human behavior. Right. Then we talk about some other things here, right? Some of your personality, there's some biology that goes along, right? There's some biology and some nurture, right? So when we look at personality traits, identical twins will resemble each other more strongly, not equally or not the same, but more strongly, whereas biological relatives will resemble each other more than adopted relatives or unrelated persons. So there's a biological component to your personality. All right, and so we look here, right? Monozygotic female pairs, monozygotic male pairs, higher positive correlation. Dizygotic, still high correlation. All right, unrelated children adopted together, we're going to have a negative correlation. Their personality traits are going to differ. They're not, right? Siblings growing up together, a lot of similar personality traits, right? Could be a function of biology, also a function of environment, right? And then parent and biological children, there's some positive correlations. Parents and adopted children, right? Data's kind of mixed. Right, the environment also has some interesting parts, right? There's a shared resemblance in personality, not only because of genes, but many aspects of the environment are the same, right? You have the same parents, you have the same environment, a lot of the same behaviors will be punished or rewarded, right? You generally hang out with the same people, you act in the same social environments, so a lot of what your personality is will be very similar. Unshared, right? Things will change, right? Every time you add a child to the family, right? It's a new family. It's not 100% change, but it adds a difference. And those of you that are maybe the oldest child or the youngest child may see, or even the middle child may realize, there's a certain difference as you add more kids, right? When you're the only kid, your parents, they can be on top of you. But then when you're one of four, by the time you're that fourth child, parents are tired, relationships change, older siblings will have some influence on your personality, and so you're going to see that's where there's some differences happen. Right, we also know, right, personality sets with time. The older you are, the more consistent your personality becomes, right? So once you get to kind of your full adulthood, you're gonna have a more consistent personality, right? Consistency increases as age, right? So this is where you get that expression: you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can overcome personality, but with just kind of letting it be as it is, those trait personalities kind of become more and more fixed. And one of the things we realize over time is anxiety levels as a person as a trait have increased over the past few generations. So we're still struggling with this idea of what is personality, right? It's more than just being different with each other, right? All of us are different in different contexts. So think about how you are at the beach bars versus how you are in class, which is how you are at home. And even how you're acting in this pandemic might be different than you're acting in your regular day-to-day routine, right? And so this leads us back to this idea: people are super complex, and this area of research is super challenging. It's very hard to kind of lay down what is personality and how we define it universally. All right, thank you.